Okay, here's podcast 2 of the chapter 11 on the endocrine system. And in this podcast, we're going to take a look at how all the different hormones of your endocrine system are actually controlled through a mechanism called feedback inhibition. To start with, your entire endocrine system is basically controlled by a part of your brain called the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus, remember, is part of the diencephalon, and it is where a lot of your homeostatic mechanisms are controlled, so where you feel hungry and thirsty and all those kinds of things. The reason for that is your hypothalamus actually communicates directly to the pituitary gland, which is called your master gland. So the hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland. So when the hypothalamus detects that something's going on, it's going to release hormones of its own to the pituitary gland and tell the pituitary gland to release hormones that will then release out to various other endocrine glands in your body. And then those different glands are going to do the different jobs for your body. So again, we learned about the different parts of the brain. So remember, the central part of your brain is the diencephalon. Your thalamus is right here, and your hypothalamus is right at this part here, and then hanging right from that is your pituitary gland. So it's really all connected into one, but your pituitary gland has the ability to release hormones directly into your bloodstream that will then contact other target glands in your body, like the thyroid gland, for example. Now, the way that the hormones get controlled is by a process called feedback inhibition. This is also called a negative feedback system. It means the same thing. And basically, the gist of it is when a hormone levels rise to a certain point, the organ that is secreting those hormones will get switched off. So they are inhibiting their own production, in a sense. So if you look over at this diagram over here, we'll go over it very quickly. But basically, this is a testosterone cycle. So if testosterone levels are detected as low, the hypothalamus will pick that up and will tell the pituitary gland our testosterone levels are low. The pituitary gland will release its own hormones called follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone to the testes, and the testes will release their own testosterone. Once the testosterone level gets higher, then the pituitary gland picks up on that and says, oh, we have enough testosterone now, I'm going to stop making follicle stimulating hormones. I'm going to tell the testes to stop making more testosterone. So it's a negative feedback. Once you get up to a certain level, the entire process stops. Okay, so again, we're maintaining by negative feedback. So the start of this, there's a stimulus or a low hormone level in the blood that's going to trigger the release of that hormone. So a stimulus, and the example we're going to use today is, say you just ate a meal and your blood sugar goes up. That would be a stimulus. A low hormone level, could be in the morning when you're about to get up, your melatonin is low, and that can trigger the release of other hormones that will wake you up, like serotonin. So the low hormone level or some kind of stimulus that comes into the body is going to say, we need to release hormone. Now, once that hormone's been released to make the reaction happen and enough of it has been released, it will stop once everything is done. So once the appropriate level in the blood is reached, the hormone production will then be stopped by the gland that is making it. So it is inhibiting itself. And a lot of times there's more than one hormone involved in this negative feedback process. Now, hormones, they will act for a longer time than like your nervous system. Remember, your nervous system is a very fast way of communicating your body. Hormones take longer and they last longer. So it is a very precise system. It's closely monitored, as I said, by your brain. The hypothalamus in your brain is closely monitoring this entire system. And hormones, once they're released, they can be present in the blood from less than a minute to up to 30 minutes. They may be around as they target the cells that they need to do. The action of what they do can last 20 minutes to several hours, depending again on what it is the job is of that particular hormone. And all hormones have different jobs, and we'll get into that in the second part of the endocrine system. Now, once the hormones have done their job, Some of them will get broken down by enzymes that are inside the target cells. So the target cells, if the enzyme's going in, the steroid enzymes, they'll go in and then they'll get destroyed by the target cells once the cell has done what it needs to do. Other hormones are going to get removed from the blood by the kidneys or liver. And this is why you can actually detect hormone levels in urine. That's why they can use urine for pregnancy tests and things, because a lot of hormones that are left over will get removed into your urine. All right, we're going to take a look at a very specific process for negative feedback, and that has to do with what happens with your pancreas. Your pancreas actually has a dual role in your body. It's part of your digestive system as well as your endocrine system. In your endocrine system, its job is to help you to maintain a healthy blood sugar level. So this is your glucose level. The way that it does this is it actually has both endocrine and exocrine glands inside of it. The endocrine glands are called islets of Langerhans, and they're going to secrete two different hormones, glucagon and insulin. And these two hormones are directly involved in regulating the amount of sugar that is in your blood at any given time, and that needs to be very closely regulated all the time. There are other parts of your pancreas. You can see here, these are duct cells, so these are actually exocrine glands, and they're going to release different enzymes directly into the digestive system. So when we get to the digestive system, we will take a look at that. So these two hormones, what do they do? Glucagon is actually a hormone that is going to stimulate your liver to break down a sugar called glycogen. So when you eat sugar, any extra sugar that you have in your body gets stored in your liver as glycogen. And it's there as a reserve. And so when your blood sugar gets low, your pancreas releases glucagon, which will break down the glycogen, and that releases sugar molecules into your blood. So it brings your blood sugar back up. After you eat a meal, your blood sugar is going to go up just because there's sugar in what you eat, or as you break it down, you create sugar. So the insulin is going to decrease the blood sugar concentrations. And it does that by affecting how the different cells in the body take in glucose. So they're going to help cells to bring glucose in. And remember, cells need glucose for energy. So you break down your glucose so that you can make all of your ATP through cellular respiration. And so the insulin is going to help your cells to get the glucose inside so that they can get broken down. Now, both of these hormones need to be working together to keep your blood sugar in balance. So we'll take a look at how they do this. This is a lot like a thermostat in your house, same idea. Okay, you have your thermostat set at a certain temperature. When your house falls below that temperature, your furnace kicks on. When it gets back up to the right temperature, your furnace stops. Okay, so the same thing happens here. So here's the liver. Your liver has these stores of glucose in the form of glycogen. Okay. Here's your pancreas, which is going to release either insulin or glucagon, depending on what the body needs. And those two hormones are going to get released throughout your entire bloodstream through all of your blood vessels. So let's start, let's say we have glucose in the bloodstream, so we'll start down here. Okay. So you just ate a meal, or you just broke down a bunch of sugar from your liver, and your glucose level has gone up. And you now have glucose in your bloodstream. So your body is going to need to get those levels back down to normal. So insulin gets secreted. And the insulin is going to, this is a non-steroid hormone. So insulin is going to actually trigger your cells to allow glucose to go in. So it actually opens up glucose channels and lets the glucose go in. So the glucose levels will go down in your blood, and then anything that is left over that your cells can't use at that time will go over to your liver to get stored. Okay, so all the extra glucose goes over to your liver. Now remember, your liver only can store so much, so anything that is in excess of that will then start to get stored in fat, and that is how fat cells form in the body. All right, so once we release that insulin, our glucose is going to get stored or used, okay? And our blood glucose levels are going to go back down to normal, to where they're supposed to be. Now, once they fall too low, the body will detect that, and then glucagon gets secreted, and that's going to tell glucose to get released from the liver, and our blood sugar is going to go back up. So it's this continuous cycle that happens all the time. And it just keeps going to keep your blood where it's supposed to be, your blood sugar where it's supposed to be. Now, sometimes this does not work properly in people. And so there is a disease called diabetes mellitus, and that is basically when somebody is not forming insulin. Either they're not making it at all, or it's not working correctly. And so when that happens, you can end up with a condition called hyperglycemia, where you have too much sugar in the body. Too much sugar in the blood can lead to dehydration. It can lead to cells becoming deflated, and they can actually be destroyed, and it can lead to death. It can cause neuropathy. It can cause your nerve cells to die. It can cause skin cells to die, muscle cells. All sorts of things can happen with diabetes. There's two types. Type 1 is often called juvenile diabetes. These are people that are insulin dependent, and that is because they actually have had their pancreatic cells destroyed. So these guys cannot make insulin. So it is impossible for them to even make any insulin. So these people have to have insulin injected into them all the time. A lot of people now that have type 1 diabetes will actually wear a pump that is giving them insulin at regular doses throughout the day. So it's monitoring their blood sugar and giving them insulin as they need it. But they have had the inability to make this. This is often inherited. You actually can get it from certain disorders. I had a student once that had type 1 diabetes from getting the chicken pox. Happened to get into her pancreas and destroy those cells. Okay? But type 1, you cannot make insulin at all. Type 2 is mature onset diabetes. So this usually happens when somebody's over the age of 40. Usually this happens to people that are overweight, and so it can be controlled with diet and exercise. But basically what happens in type 2 is that your cells become insulin resistant. So that means that your cells do not respond to insulin the way they're supposed to. So when the insulin binds to the cells and the cells are supposed to let the glucose in, they don't. And so the treatment for that could be taking other types of insulin. You also have to very, very closely watch your sugar intake and be very careful about how much sugar you take in, because your body can't process it in the same way. Okay. So some people will need to do injections of insulin in order to lower their blood vessels. So again, you can do injections by needle, or you could have the pump. Hypoglycemia can happen when your glucose levels get too low, and this can happen by giving too much insulin or by not eating enough, and that can happen. People can often get shaky, and they're just not feeling well. But if a diabetic becomes hypoglycemic, they need a quick shot of sugar in order to get their blood sugar back up. So it's a really tight balancing act for somebody who is doing this, has diabetes. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the stress response, which is another hormone reaction that can happen in your body. So stress is created when you have an actual threat or a perceived threat on your body, and your body is going to prepare itself to meet the challenge. And it has a bunch of different things it's going to do. Different types of stressors that could happen could be from outright physical danger. You get in a car accident or something, somebody's chasing you, something like that. Some people will feel this response if they have to give a class presentation. They have to talk in front of people. A bad memory could bring things up. Or even for some people, something as simply as a loud noise can cause this response to occur in their body. So when the response happens, what is actually happening is you're going to be activating your nervous system and specific hormones. So the fight or flight response is actually going to be involved with two different systems. So again, remember, your hypothalamus is the part of your brain that is going to detect you're scared. There's something going on, you're nervous, you're not feeling right. Your hypothalamus is going to signal the adrenal glands to produce two different hormones. There's epinephrine, which is also called adrenaline, and there is cortisol. And these hormones are going to get released into the bloodstream. Okay, so your hypothalamus here is going to detect it. It's going to tell part of the pituitary gland to then tell the part of the adrenal gland to release cortisol. And it's also going to tell part of your adrenal gland to release epinephrine. those two hormones are going to have various effects on the body. So what they will do, they'll work together, and one of the things they'll do is they'll increase heart rate and blood pressure, and this is going to increase blood flow to your muscles. And we need to increase blood flow to our muscles so that we can get more sugar and oxygen to your muscles, because sugar and oxygen are going to be used to get energy, and you need energy if you're going to be running away from something. You're going to increase your breathing rate. Your breathing rate increases so you can again increase your amount of oxygen so you can get more energy. You're going to increase sweating because with all this extra energy you're making, you need to cool the body. Okay, you'll get a sudden rush of strength. This increase in all of this blood flow to the muscles is going to allow them to contract more efficiently, and that's going to give you a rush of strength if you need it. And then it will actually go all the way down and release glycogen in the liver so that you can get as much energy as possible at that moment. Digestion will actually slow down, and the reason for that is there's a lot of blood flow that goes to your digestive system, and so the blood that is there gets directed away from your digestive system to your muscles where it's more needed. Also, your pupils will dilate, and this will help to improve vision. So they'll get bigger so you can see even better and you can know what's going on around you. So it's a lot of different things that your body is going to go through during this. The result of this at the end is it puts your body out of homeostasis. So you're no longer in homeostasis, and it can lead to severe exhaustion. So if somebody goes through the fight or flight response or has this adrenaline rush, they very often are exhausted afterwards, and they need, it takes time to recoup. That's why we do not stay in an adrenaline rush all the time.